Part 1.
1. You are going to hear a conversation taking place in the airport. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen to the tape and answer the questions.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Northwest Airlines. How can I help you today?
I'd like to check in for the 2 o'clock flight to Nairobi.
Okay. Oh, that flight has been moved back to 2:45. Nothing major, just a weather delay that the plane experienced in Casablanca. May I have your name, please?
Sure. It's Jim Harkness.
Is that Harkness with 2 S's?
Yep. And that's Jim with 1 M.
Got it. Oh, I see you're connecting from Beijing. You sure are getting around.
Yeah. I'm the director of the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Beijing. I'm going to Nairobi for a conference on conservation planning.
Fascinating. Will you have any luggage to check in?
Yes, 1 bag, 1 carry-on, and 1 laptop.
Fine. Put the bag on the scale, please. We are going to fill out customs forms before departure. Can I ask about the contents of your check-in bag?
Sure. It's clothing, personal effects, some gifts, and a few books.
Thanks. What seating would you prefer, aisle or window?
I'd like a window seat, 3 rows back from those large TV screens if possible.
Let me see here. We have 1 4 rows back. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just hate being right in front of those screens. Then I have to watch every dumb movie that comes on.
Now look at questions 8 to 10. As the talk continues, answer questions 8 to 10.
I understand. Is that your carry-on?
Yes, I bought it in India last year.
It sure is a nice bag. Unfortunately, I think it's too big for the overhead storage compartment. Maximum dimensions for carry-on baggage is 16 inches wide by 10 inches high by 21 inches long.
Oh, well, it's okay with width and length, but it's 12 inches high. Are you sure that it won't fit? I've squeezed it in before.
No, I'm sorry. You'll have to check it in with an agent prior to boarding.
All right, it's no big deal.
One final thing. Do you have any DVDs that you purchased in China?
Yes, I have my own music CDs.
Okay, that's fine. We're not allowed to transport DVDs. We're working on controlling copyright regulations imposed by WTO.
Sure, I understand. Is that everything?
Yes, it is. You have a wonderful flight now.
Thank you.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. First, you will have some time to look at questions 11 to 14.
May I have your attention, please? We're going to start the meeting now. I'm very pleased to see so many people here. You obviously all know that the purpose of this meeting is to discuss how to help the community. Next month, the National Union of Students are running a National Community Week. They've asked us to cooperate in any way we can. The idea is that all students should give up some of their time to help the community.
Surely that's what we do in Rag Week. Does that mean we're going to do this sort of thing twice a year?
No, not really. The scheme is nationwide. It has two aims: to show the public that students are responsible members of society, and to show students ways in which they can give really practical help to the community. The National Union of Students haven't made any suggestions. They want the students in each area to work out their own schemes. And really, that's the purpose of this meeting, to think up some ideas about the sort of help we can give. Let's discuss now. Any suggestions?
Before the broadcast continues, look at questions 15 to 20.
Where is Milkman Street? Is it far?
No, I don't think so. It's somewhere near. Oh, look there. It's just around the corner. What's the number again?
Number 8. Mr. Tyler, 8 Milkman Street.
Careful with those tins of paint.
I'll knock. The welfare office said that they'd written to him to tell him we were coming.
The curtains are all drawn. It doesn't look as if anyone's at home.
He's probably watching TV.
He's a long time coming.
He'll be pleased to see us, I'm sure.
Go away. I don't want any.
Hello, Mr. Tyler. Is it Mr. Tyler, isn't it? We're the student volunteers.
Engineers? I don't want any engineers. I've got a gas fire.
No, Mr. Tyler. We've come to do your decorating.
No, thank you. Not today.
Perhaps you could open the door, Mr. Tyler. We've come to paint your kitchen.
Well, why didn't you say so?
We can come again tomorrow if it's inconvenient now.
No. It's all right. Don't stay there at the front. Come round the back. I never use the front door, only the back.
Who is it?
It's the student volunteer.
Hello, you're the student volunteer, aren't you?
Yes, good afternoon. The welfare office told me to come here. My name is Diana.
Yes, they wrote to me about this. Come in, please.
There, isn't that nice and comfy?
That's lovely, dear.
And warm too. It's really cosy in here.
I wish I could get about a bit more, like you young people. I could go out and see my son and my grandchildren. They live in Edinburgh, you know. I don't see them often. My son has got a lot of work. I used to go out to work. That was after my husband died. Never worked when I was married, though.
No?
No, never. He used to say a woman's place is in the home.
Yes, life's like that. I'll just dust these photos.
That's him, the one in the middle of the front row. His moustache was lovely. That was taken when he was in the army.
He looks very smart.
Yes, he was. I can remember it as if it were yesterday. Well, there we are. I want you to read a book to me. You know my eyes are not very good now.
Where is the book?
It's on my desk. It is Little Dorrit by Dickens. You know the bit I like? It's on page 201. It describes Little Dorrit's love for her father.
Ah, yes, here. She never left him. Nice and comfortable? Here, put this shawl around your shoulders.
My husband used to read this book to me.
She never left him all that night. as if she had done him a wrong which her tenderness could hardly repair. She sat by him in his sleep, at times softly kissing him.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3.
You will hear two business studies students, Evelyn and Mark, preparing for a seminar presentation. Before you hear the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25.
Well, I think the marketing of food would be a good topic. I read a very interesting article the other day about the Canadian food market.
I suppose everybody's interested in food, even if it's trying not to eat. Why Canada? I know that's where you come from, but isn't it just all North America really?
No, that's why I thought this article was interesting. Although lots of US companies are well established in Canada, and vice versa, there are still subtle differences between the two markets. It says here, the Canadian market is definitely not a northern clone of the US. I like that. And it says that if you understand these differences, it can have a big impact on successful food marketing.
So I know that Canada has a big French-speaking population in Quebec. Is this what they're referring to?
Not only French and English speakers, there are many different ethnic groups in Canada. It's really quite multicultural. For example, Toronto has large Asian and Italian populations, and Vancouver's got a large Asian population too. And because Canada's population is small, these groups make quite an impact, introducing new styles of cooking. So you can see lots of unfamiliar vegetables and things in the markets, and new restaurants are opening every day. It's great if you love trying out new foods, as many people do.
Which kinds of food are becoming popular?
Well, some Asian food, I'd say, has been popular for quite a while, like Chinese. But now, Southeast Asian restaurants are becoming very fashionable. Then there's Mediterranean, of course, such as Greek, Italian, and so on. But Caribbean and Mexican food is really taking off among young people these days.
So are the supermarkets starting to stock the ingredients that are needed to prepare these foods at home? You know, all those unusual condiments and sauces.
Yes, that's right. It's quite interesting going to the supermarket, isn't it? And noticing how they're introducing sections for foods of different nationalities. You can buy quite exotic products locally these days. The article mentioned that 80% of the Canadian retail market is controlled by 8 major national supermarket chains, so that when they introduce changes, they can happen quite rapidly.
Okay, well, how are we going to organise this seminar then?
I made some notes on the trends in the Canadian market, about changing tastes, and also patterns for where food is consumed. I thought maybe we could summarize it into a chart or table, and maybe use the overhead projector to present it.
Good idea. Maybe I could have a look for similar trends and tastes in Australia and the UK for comparison. Let's have a look at what you found.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now, as the conversation continues, answer questions 26 to 30.
The most significant trend, it seemed to me, was that Canadians are definitely interested in healthy food. For example, did you know that salads are the third most commonly eaten food in Canadian restaurants?
Really? What about organic food then? Is that becoming more popular?
Yes, it's definitely moving into the mainstream compared to a few years ago. And a recent survey showed that 4 out of 5 shoppers said that they check the fat and nutritional information on the packet when they're deciding what to buy.
What other trends did you find out?
There's one change I noticed straight away when I was home last year in the meat department. You know, here the meat packaging says rump steak or 4-quarter chops and so on. Well, they discovered that most consumers these days didn't know what to do with these roasts and rounds and ribs. So the government approved a new naming system for cuts of meat, which is related to the required cooking technique.
What a good idea! I've never really understood the difference between sirloin, rump, round and all those names. So how many new categories are there?
8. There are 3 kinds of steak, for grilling, for marinating, and for simmering. And then there's what they call quick-serve beef, for stir-fries, I suppose. And premium oven roast, pot roast, and stewing beef. It's a great idea, isn't it? I hope it catches on here.
I agree. Any other trends that you thought were significant?
Well, what's really interesting is what the article called mobile meals. In other words, more and more Canadians are eating meals away from home, but not just eating more junk food. They're projecting a 40% increase in snack food sales over the next 3 years, and the growth is coming from healthy snacks. You know, the ones that have less cholesterol and fat, such as muesli bars, health food bars, and those types of products. Apparently, in the food marketing jargon, they're called nutritious portable foods, which means healthy snacks. The other major trend is that young people are doing more of the food shopping these days, so marketing has to be aimed more at them, as well as more conventionally at the mother.
Thanks, Evelyn. I think we'll have an interesting discussion about these trends and the comparisons with other English-speaking countries. I'll see if I can get some information about them to compare with yours, and meet you on Friday to put it together.
See you then. Bye.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
Listen to the continuation of the lecture about the human brain. Look at the diagram before you listen.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Okay, we have looked at the top view of the brain and seen how it is divided into lobes. Now we are going to look at a more complex diagram of the center of the brain. I will briefly go through some of the important parts that make up the brain and then talk more about what each does. First of all, you can see that by far the largest part of the brain is the cerebrum, and it is made up of the 3 lobes we have already talked about. The lobe below, coloured yellow on the diagram here, is the cerebellum. Right in the centre of the brain here is the thalamus. The hypothalamus is part of it, but it has a slightly different function. Now here, running down from the centre of the brain, is the brain stem. It is made up of the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata, and is connected to the spinal cord, which you can see here at the bottom of the diagram. Now, finally, this little gland just to the left of the midbrain, it looks like a little tail, is the pituitary gland. Okay, let's go back and say something about the function of the various parts of the brain. The cerebrum, the largest part, as we have said, has 2 halves or hemispheres. I will talk more about the difference between the 2 hemispheres later. The cerebrum is the part of the brain that is really our intelligence. It controls voluntary movement, that is, movement that we are in control of, speaking, for example. But it is also responsible for our emotional thinking and memory. The cerebellum is responsible for fine movement and coordination. It helps us with balance, for example, and to understand where we are in relation to space around us. The thalamus, here in the centre, processes what we feel with our body, touch and temperature, for example, and controls how we react to those senses. The hypothalamus has a similar function, but regulates bodily needs, such as hunger and thirst, and tells us when we need sleep. Now, at the top of the brain stem is the midbrain. This is a sort of switchboard, a very complex switchboard. It sends messages which help the brain communicate with other parts of the nervous system. The pons, in the middle of the brain stem here, sends messages from the cerebrum to the cerebellum and spinal cord. The medulla oblongata is here just above the spinal cord. It regulates essential bodily functions, like breathing and the rate of our heartbeat. The spinal cord is part of the central nervous system and runs down inside the spinal column. It connects the brain to nerves that go to the rest of the body. Now, the pituitary gland, this little gland, has a hugely important function. It releases hormones to the body that regulate all sorts of things. How quickly we grow, and the size we grow to, the rate at which we age. It also regulates whether we have a slow or fast metabolism and how we relate to stress. Now I am going to show you a model of the human brain, and I want you to identify...
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.